Good afternoon. This is the last substantive week of the course. We have the two last lectures, lectures 21 and 22 today. And then I'll be posting the final exam next Sunday. These last two are really attempt to draw all the themes together, both from part one and from part two. I call this last week Banking and the Real World. And what do I mean by that? People asked at the beginning of the course, is this really going to talk about just the money markets, or is it going to have something to do with the real world? Well, I think the most important feature of the real world that we live in right now is financial globalization. And so that's what we need to understand. We need to bring that into our thinking throughout all of our thinking about economics, and in particular when we're thinking about money and government policy. So the two lectures, the first one is about shadow banking, because I've come to think that shadow banking is the characteristic institutional form of our day. It's the kind of banking that arises in an era of financial globalization. And so it's what we need to understand. We need to understand how it works in order to regulate it, in order to manage it. We need to understand how the kinds of instability that arise because of shadow banking. Sometimes people think that because it's moving banking into the marketplace, that it will be naturally stable. We've learned in the financial crisis that that's not true, that all it does is to create a different kind of instability, and one that was pretty scary when we were going through it. So this evolution of institutional forms and understanding it and coming to grips with it is inevitable part of learning about money and banking. The second issue is not the evolution of the real world, but the evolution of our understanding of the real world. Because in the way that economics works, what people think is happening is actually a fact. It's one of the facts of the system itself. And if people don't understand how the system works and they behave as if it works in some other way, then that changes how the system actually behaves. So it's important to understand the way that people understand the system, even if it's wrong or even if it's partial. So the last lecture is called Touching the Elephant, Three Views, and it compares and contrasts the money view with more standard views of economics. The economic view, which I characterize as the past determines the present, and the finance view, which I characterize as the future determines the present. The money view, because of the importance of the survival constraint, is very much about the present determining the present. Now, that doesn't mean that the past and the future doesn't matter, because the past is where all of these promises to pay, all of these commitments, these cash commitments, come from the past. They were promises that were made, and we'll see today. We find out today if we can actually make good on them, or if we have to roll them over into the future. And expectations about the future determine whether we can roll them over into the future. So the past and the future are there. The money view is consistent with the economics view, consistent with the finance view. But what it does is to bring out into the open some features of the real world that are abstracted in standard economics and in standard finance. So I don't see this course as being some kind of alternative perspective. I see it as a complementary perspective. However, it's not clear at any moment in time how exactly the money view complements the finance and economics view. This depends on the institutional structure. It depends on the situation that the economy is facing at any moment in time. So I think of these two lectures, these last two lectures, as synthetic. They're pulling together all the different threads of the course, and I hope you feel when you're done with them that in fact finally the course all makes sense and you see where it was all going at the end. And I thank you for your patience if you've made it all this far, and I hope you'll feel rewarded this week, that somehow all of the pieces will come together. That's what I'm trying to do, and I hope it works. So have a good week, and I'll talk to you once more before the final exam.